Welcome to Soccer Morning on World Soccer Talk. Here's your host, Jason Davis.
Good morning, everybody. Happy Monday. Welcome in to Soccer Morning, brought to you by World Soccer Talk. We are live, coming out of a big weekend, the first weekend of the 2015 MLS season. We spent last week fretting over whether or not it would happen. We spent Friday getting the predictions of about 1,000. I think the total number was 18. I think we had 18 guests on Friday's show. If you missed that, man, go back and listen to it. It still keeps a little bit. We got some games under our belts now to review and look at. We're going to do that with Kyle McCarthy from Fox Soccer in a couple of minutes. A very MLS-tastic program for you today. Kyle McCarthy from Fox Soccer to go over everything that happened. Seattle's dominance, TFC scoring goals, Jozy out the door. 2 already for the Reds. Obviously had a couple of one-goal wins for FC Dallas and Houston. A couple of games that didn't produce any goals at all. We'll review all of that with Kyle McCarthy. And then at 10:30, we'll drill down to Orlando and talk to Paul Tenorio from the Orlando Sentinel about the debut of Orlando City Soccer Club. They took on NYCFC in front of 62,000 plus at the Citrus Bowl yesterday. Kaká with an equalizer in stoppage time to give the home side a point out of their first game. Would have been very disappointing, I imagine, to come out of that game, a game that they dominated for most of it. To come out of it with a loss, it would have been sad. Would have sent a lot of purple-clad people home very, very upset. Very sad. Also want to make sure I mention, I started this yesterday. I mentioned it yesterday. It became clear. I was watching halftime of that game, Orlando City, New York City FC. And Taylor Twellman, friend of the show. We need to get Taylor back, by the way. Stop being so damn busy, Taylor. Friend of the show. He was interviewing Don Garber at halftime. A couple of things came out of that. I'll get to those in a second. But it occurred to me that we've never had Don Garber on this program. Now, we've tried several times. We'll continue to try through the usual channels. But I think we need your support to make this happen. So I'm thinking Twitter campaign. It worked with Stu Holden. We had him in for a half an hour as a co-host. Now, I don't expect that Don Garber's got half an hour to spend to be co-host on this show. But 15 minutes, Don, maybe, to have a chat about the future of MLS, about the way things are going now, about those details maybe, and what that means for the future of MLS. I think that's doable. Twitter that guy. Tweet that guy at the Soccer Don on behalf of Soccer Morning. Let him know that you would love for him to come on the show, because then I can check off all of the major pro soccer league boxes. We've had the commissioner of the NASL, Bill Peterson. We've had the former commissioner, of USL, Tim Holt, or president, whatever his title was. He was the boss. He's not the boss anymore. We're going to have to get that guy, the guy who's replacing Tim Holt. We'll have to get him on the show so we can check that box as well. So do that. So at Soccer Morning is our Twitter handle, obviously. At the Soccer Don is Don's. You should know that already. Let's do the news here ahead of Kyle McCarthy and the MLS review. Again, MLS opening weekend, 62,000 people witness Orlando City get a draw with Kaká's stoppage time, free kick, equalizer. Not a great game to watch necessarily in terms of quality, but certainly energetic, fun. Lots of, obviously the support of Orlando was massive and ratcheted up the drama of that game. In Vancouver, Toronto gets their first win of the season. Jozy outdoor with 2 goals, which means he has now scored as many goals in one game for Toronto FC as he did in, I think, 42. Well, I think he had a cup goal and a league goal for Sunderland. So he scored 2 goals in all competitions for Sunderland. He scored 2 goals in one game for Toronto FC. And he's doubled up the league total from his Sunderland days. He looks comfortable, I think. Seattle was dominant in a 3-0 win over New England. Obviously, no Jermaine Jones and no Lee Nguyen hurt the defending Eastern Conference champions pretty badly, but give Seattle full credit. They looked amazing. That third goal was fun to watch. Marco Papa, Obafemi Martins, Clint Dempsey combining for Seattle's third, and they look like they might be a good bet to repeat as supporter sealed winners, to maybe go to MLS Cup and finally get that trophy that they've been chasing. Speaking of Don Garber and that halftime chat with Taylor Twellman down in Orlando, the big news out of that chat is that Garber says it will be 45 days or so until the next round of MLS expansion is announced. We can all handicap. I think Sacramento was top of the list for most people based on everything that they've done to drum up support in that town, the backing of the Sacramento Kings NBA franchise, the backing of the San Francisco 49ers, the mayor of the city being squarely behind that push, the amount of fans that they're getting in the door at the USL level. Sacramento seems like a shoo-in. The second spot, right now, my money would be on Minnesota. That seems like where the league is focusing at the moment. Down a level in American soccer at the NASL, and I know that's going to upset some people, but that's where they are at the moment. NASL, New York Cosmos. This is interesting. The season doesn't start for a little while now, but reports out of New York say that the Cosmos are going to go down to Havana and play the Cuban national team in a friendly on June 2nd. They would be the first American professional sports franchise to play a game in Cuba in something like 60 years. Now that the embargo has been lifted by President Obama's administration, that'll be a fascinating little bit of history down there in Havana. I'm looking forward to that. The outcome of the game really, the fact that the Cosmos are going to be breaking ground and playing in Cuba is fascinating. Over in La Liga, fascinating weekend there as well. Real Madrid fell to Athletic Bilbao 1-0, while Barcelona destroyed Rayo Vallecano 6-1. Lionel Messi with the hat trick, his record-breaking La Liga hat trick. I can't remember what number that is. I didn't put that down, but he does have the record to himself now. 6 straight years of 40-plus goals for Lionel Messi. That's insanity. And in the calendar year of 2015, he has 18 goals and 9 assists in 16 matches. The guy's pretty good. Now that Barcelona has won on a weekend that Real Madrid has dropped points, Barcelona jumps back atop the standings in La Liga. It's not going well for Real Madrid for whatever reason. You would think that with all of the talent that they have available, that they would be able to get goals out of Ronaldo and Benzema and Bale, and they're not happening right now. Toni Kroos not playing the best soccer of his career at the moment. Remember, this is a team that rattled off 20 straight wins not that long ago, and now they're in danger of letting the title slip away. It is 1 point, long way to go still, but you have to imagine that Real Madrid's not feeling too good about themselves, and you have Carlo Ancelotti taking responsibility on his shoulders. The FA Cup quarterfinals, this weekend, Liverpool held to a goalless draw by Blackburn at Anfield. That means you'll have a replay there at Ewood Park. Villa beat rivals West Brom to advance to the semis. A pitch invasion there at Villa Park. Is that okay? Are we okay with the pitch? I mean, look, you beat, if you're Villa and you beat West Brom in the FA Cup when you've had a terrible, terrible year, facing a relegation fight, and you can't score any goals, maybe that's okay. Jumping up and down with the players on the field, okay, sure. Let's just keep everybody safe. And you have United and Arsenal today at Old Trafford, so that should be a fascinating game in the FA Cup as well. All right, let's take a break. We've reset. Let's get Kyle McCarthy on the line. We'll talk about the MLS weekend across the board. It's Soccer Morning, brought to you by World Soccer Talk. Don't go anywhere. Be right back.
Talking too loud, but I can't hear you calling.
Hey there, it's Jason Davis, and if you're like me and love playing fantasy soccer games, I want to let you know about a fantastic new game called Draft11.com. This is not your usual fantasy soccer game. Draft11.com is different for 2 major reasons. First, it's a daily fantasy soccer game. And second, it gives you an opportunity to win cash. So instead of playing an entire season and competing against, say, the 3 million people who play Fantasy Premier League and winning nada, you can play Draft11.com over 1 match day against up to 10 people. And if your team wins, you win. Cash, not points. So go ahead and support our new sponsor that's helping bring Soccer Morning to you every single day. Head over to Draft11.com, sign up for a free account, and take a shot at trying to win some cold, hard cash. Thanks.
Welcome back to Soccer Morning on World Soccer Talk with Jason Davis.
Here we go, back on Soccer Morning, and on the phone with me now from Fox Soccer, Kyle McCarthy. Follow him on Twitter at Kyle J. McCarthy. And make sure you're following Inside MLS as well, as the season is now underway. Kyle, how are you, sir?
I'm doing very well, thanks. I'm just starting to catch my breath after a very busy, very exciting opening weekend.
It was busy. It was exciting in places. It did fail to deliver a lot of goals in some cases, Kyle. But I think what we'll do is you're in Seattle. You're there for the Seattle Sounders New England Revolution opener. And I think we'll start there because while there may have been a lot of attention on Orlando and certainly the 62,000 people that showed up at the Seattle's an established team with a retinue of stars, and they put on a show. I threw out the caveat when I mentioned this game in the Open, Kyle, that, of course, New England not having Jermaine Jones or Lee Nguyen on the field was a big deal, but just how good were the Sounders yesterday?
They were the best team in the league this weekend, certainly. You look at the performance that they put together. You look at the cohesiveness of the performance they put together, and that's a great way to start the season if you're Sounders FC. You look at how they were able to move, how they were able to pick apart the Revs, and how they were able to make the best use of that time and space. It was really encouraging for Sounders FC.
You look at Obafemi Martins and Clint Dempsey, who grab most of the headlines within that team. They have a good platform. They have a good midfield. They're shifting some things around defensively that didn't really become a problem yesterday. We'll see when they face teams with their full complements. But when you look at Dempsey and Martins, considering now that Landon Donovan has retired and Robbie Keane's going to have to form a partnership with Giassi Zardes or somebody else there at the Galaxy, and maybe you can put Jozy Outdoor and Giovinco on that level eventually. But for the time being, it's Martins and Dempsey as the preeminent pairing up top in this league.
Yeah, I think that's fair, and it's because they have that great chemistry together. They understand where to find each other, how to move to trouble opposing defenses, and then how to use each other to get in behind. And I think you saw that last night. They were very effective, really gave the Reds trouble from the opening whistle, and used that ability to go out and put together a great performance.
Now, we saw around this league, as exciting as it was, some rust. A lot of these teams came out of the preseason, maybe not ready to fire on all cylinders, and that's understandable. That happens every season. Maybe it's a little bit different and a little bit exacerbated by the CBA negotiations and some of these guys flying around the country. But that didn't affect the Sounders. Was that a function of the Revs and the fight that they put up against Seattle, or was that just how good Seattle is right this moment?
I think it was a function of the Sounders getting everything together quickly. I think when you look at how they performed last night, it looked like a team that was approaching mid-season form. And there's a familiarity within the ranks. There is a knowledge of how to really unsettle the opposition. And Seattle put that on full display. I thought the Revs were decent at points last night. They were able to get the ball down during the first half at different junctures, and they almost leveled it with Kellen Rowe right before halftime. But Seattle was very good, and they deserved the points, certainly.
Okay, we're going to move around. There's plenty of games to cover, but I'm so curious about two individual performances that I have to ask you, having witnessed them in person. First, Brad Evans at center back for the Sounders. It's obviously a shift for him. He's an incredibly intelligent player. He can obviously play the ball with his feet very well, but is he going to be a long-term answer for them in that position?
Certainly looks like it. That's a change that they've made coming into this season in a bid to give him a little bit more. And he was very good last night. He is still a work in progress in terms of picking up the right spots and making sure that he's doing everything he needs to do to be an effective center back. But it's a very assured performance from him in a spot where he hasn't had a lot of match practice. He is a particularly intelligent, particularly tactical player. He is so versatile that he can step in anywhere and put in a performance. I think you saw that last.
The other one I'd like to ask about is Juan Agudelo. Obviously, Went to Europe. It didn't work out. He didn't get to play at all, and now he's back in a Revolution uniform, and he could be the player that helps put them over the top, I suppose. How did he look in his return?
He gave away the penalty, which wasn't great, and he was starved of service. When you don't have Jermaine Jones and Lee Wynn, there can be some issues for the Revs in trying to combine quickly and use that ability to win the ball in good areas and then hurt teams when they're a little bit stretched. And Agadello huffed and puffed, and he tried to do what he does, but it was a difficult night for him and a difficult night for the Revs.
Let's move on from that game and go to again what was the marquee matchup, only because it was the debut of two teams, because it took place in front of a big crowd in Orlando City and New York City FC. From what you were able to see, what did you make of Orlando's performance? Because ultimately they get a draw, but I imagine they're not too happy about that inside the locker room. No face, but they probably should have won that game.
That's fair. I think when you look at how Orlando City performed, that they've collected all 3 points. But that being said, there's a lot of value to the way that this match unfolded for them. They were able to cope with a little bit of the frustration of not firing on all cylinders in that first half. They were able to respond after going down to a wonderful Mitch Disker goal. And then they got that wonderful hallmark moment at the end, a little bit of luck for Kaká to draw level of depth. So are they 100% happy getting 3 points? I'm sure not. But the way it unfolded, it had some value.
Do you believe that there's that these teams are going to get significantly better over the course of the next couple of months? They are expansion sides. We can't expect them to be cohesive and fluid in their first outing, but I just wonder what their ceiling is from your perspective.
Teams are capable of mounting a playoff push from where I stand, and that's a function of MLS having 6 playoff berths for 10 teams. So yeah, that has to be the objective for both sides. And you saw it yesterday. There's some intriguing pieces to put together, and it came together in fits and starts. But you have to target the playoffs if you're both teams because it's possible, and it's just a matter of assembling things and making sure that you get the consistency required to make a sustained push.
And in terms of what Jason Kreis has put together, and I'll come to Orlando in a second, what Jason Kreis has put together, they're obviously waiting on Frank Lampard. That'll change things significantly for them. But you saw David Villa going through that experience that so many DP strikers, goal scorers, guys who need good service go through in this league, and that's the frustration of not getting the ball where he wants it, when he wants it. Is that something that they can fix in the interim, or are they going to have to wait for Lampard?
I don't think they have to wait. I think they will find a way to get him the ball more reliably. But that's a problem that a lot of DPs face. As you said, just look at what Robbie Keane had to go through on Friday night. He was ridiculously frustrated with the type and the quality of service that he received. Eventually, he had an impact on the game, certainly. But that's part and parcel of being a DP in this league sometimes. You have to roll on those days when you're not getting the ball as much as you want and you're not getting the quality in the passing that you need.
Is there something to be said then? I mean, again, New York City's got other DPs or another DP coming in, and perhaps they'll be looking for another one in the summer and add a third name. Is there something to be said, though, for what Orlando did with signing up Kaká, a guy who is going to drop deeper, whose talents are better dropping deeper, who can pick up the ball and be more involved in the game over the course of 90 minutes than it is to sign up a guy who, while he can bang in the goals, again, needs the service. And if you don't have the type of midfield to get him the ball, it can be frustrating. Kaká was really good, is what I'm trying to say.
Yes, he was good. And everybody would take Kaká on their team. Everybody would take the VP on their team. But Kaká has the added benefit of being able to move around and find the game. And you saw that a bit yesterday. You'd see him pop up on the right, and then he'd move to the left, and then he'd try and find one-on-one opportunities. Then he'd try and combine. Then he'd look to shoot. And you at the type of performance that he's put together yesterday, and it's encouraging because he's exact on the game and really boosted Orlando City's chances. That's important for them because they're also still trying to figure everything out. And to get that sort of display from Gakai is a great first step for them.
How about Brek Shea at left back for Orlando City? Obviously, he's gone through a positional switch since he left for England and came back. This has happened to the national team. Now it's happening at the club level. He had a nice little bit of magic where he left Josh Williams in his dust. And that's the kind of thing you might get out of Brek, but is he going to be defensively reliable enough for Orlando City to get away with playing him at that spot all season?
It's something we're going to have to watch against better teams. Teams that understand how to move the ball quickly and really place Shea under pressure. I don't know if New York City did that enough yesterday. I think that there will be matches where Shea will come under a lot of scrutiny, and he's going to have to cope with it. That being said, he's got that little bit of special something that if everything's firing for him, then he can really have an influence on the game. And don't underestimate the importance of having Louis Neal in front of him. Neal is smart enough to drop in at left back and allow Shea to go up and on the overlap and contribute to the attack. So I think there's a balance there that will help Orlando City going forward.
I do think it's good to see sort of an evolution within MLS of fullbacks who get up the field and join in the attack. And we've seen it over the last couple of seasons, but traditionally MLS is more of a lockdown defensive kind of fullback league. I mean, at least that's the way I've seen it. Previously, is that something you see is taking off across MLS, or am I mischaracterizing it a bit?
I think when you look at the MLS fullback pool, it's generally a mixture of players who are very good going forward and a little bit suspect defensively, or they're good defensively and can't really contribute much in the attack. I think that's just part and parcel of how MLS teams build their rosters and identify talent at fullback. But you like to see teams diverting from the normal course, and certainly spending the amount of money that Orlando City did and then throwing Brek Shea at left back is a different look for this league.
Let's turn to Toronto. Big money signings in Altidore and Giovinco to sort of reboot the big money spending that Toronto's gone through the last couple of years in an attempt to make the playoffs. They go to Vancouver. Vancouver's a very talented team, perhaps still a little young and raw, despite some success last year. And they drop. They get a win. They drop 3 goals. One of them is a penalty for Jozy, but it was the goal from that Giovinco set up for Altidore that I think is the one that's going to get people most excited in Toronto.
Yeah, I had a chance to be at BC Place for that game, and Toronto FC's performance in the second half in particular was quite impressive. It took a little bit of time for the Reds to cope with the game tactically. Kekuta Mane ran riot in that first half, and the Reds, their defensive line was all over the place. Warren Cavall was just a little too aggressive in that first half. But Greg Vanny brought him in at halftime, sorted things out. You got a better second half from that defense, and it really put TFC in a position where they were able to exploit a Vancouver team that wasn't able to adjust to their adjustments. And it was a really encouraging display after the break for the Reds because they're able to assert control and possession and then use it to really punish Vancouver.
What does it mean, if anything, that Altidore got 2 goals in his first game in MLS after scoring 2 in his entire run at Sunderland? Does it mean anything?
Well, it's certainly neat for people like us to know the parallels, but I don't think it's something Altidore thinks about. I've asked him time and again, whether he thinks the goals are good for his confidence or whether, having those breakthroughs or is able to put him back on solid ground. And basically what he says is, I'm confident in my ability. I know I'm going to get goals. And that's what happens. And I think he showed that on Saturday. He was able to just persist on a day where he didn't always receive the best service, but at the right times, he was able to step up, influence the game, get the goal, and help his team secure a precious 3 points.
Yeah, look, I like drawing out the narratives, making some assumptions, jumping to some conclusions, and the fact that he pulled a Panenka on that penalty, Kyle, I mean, it just makes you kind of You kind of chuckle a bit because that's not something a guy suffering from a lack of confidence does. And I've seen some analysis that maybe Jozy didn't believe in himself at Sunderland. Is that a step too far? Because, just one game back after a preseason in Toronto, all of a sudden it's all back for him.
I think it's time to put away the jump to conclusions, Matt, and just sort of roll with it at this point. I don't think Altidore went through some crisis of confidence. I think he was in a difficult situation at Sunderland. He didn't have the sort of impact that he wanted. At times that was on him. At times it was on the team around him. But when you look at what he was able to do on Saturday, you look at his overall display, you look at how incisive he was when he needed to be. It's encouraging for Toronto, certainly, especially when you see a team like that, when you can get that sort of work in possession and then take advantage of the opponent by carving them open. I think that's a good thing for Altidore, a good thing for the rest.
Yeah, Altidore scoring. Giovinco looks like a marvel on the ball, and we knew that, but to see him actually doing it for Toronto has got to be a big boost of confidence for everybody in that team. He's pretty marvelous. Let's look around the league very quickly before I run out of time here. Let's talk about the defending champs. You mentioned Robbie Keane's frustration. They get a 2-0 win over Chicago, who was abjectly poor in that game. Kyle, I don't know what that necessarily means for the Fire long term, but LA without Donovan, did you see enough to think that they're going to be able to climb back to the top of the mountain again?
I think they're going to be fine. I had a chance to be at that game in Carson and soak in how the Galaxy reacted to that match, and I think they're going to be okay, but it's going to take a little bit of time to adjust. When you go from having Landon Donovan in your lineup to not having Landon Donovan in your lineup, it's a change, certainly, and the Galaxy are going to have to adapt how they go forward to accommodate for it. That being said, you saw why the Galaxy have won 3 titles in 4 years. They didn't have their best stuff on Friday, but they kept their heads, they kept their composure. It did exactly what they needed to do to brush aside a Chicago team that was, quite frankly, not very good.
One game I'll point out here again. I'm running out of time, so apologies to anybody out there whose team I don't get to. Portland and RSL played to a goalless draw, and look, on paper you see that scoreline, Kyle. You might not think much of that game, but there's certainly some talking points coming out of it. The fact that Portland was able to hold a clean sheet against RSL has got to be pretty encouraging for them.
Yeah, and they finished last season fairly strong defensively. They're in the midst of a pretty lengthy shutout streak, but with the changes they made at the back last year to go out and get a clean sheet in that first game is important for them. But the same thing holds for RSL. They've made some changes as well. They've gone to that 4-3-3. They've tweaked things up a little bit, and the fact that they got a point at Providence Park is a good building block for them as well.
Yeah. Kyle McCarthy from Fox Soccer, Kyle J. McCarthy on Twitter, and make sure you're following Inside MLS and reading Inside MLS over at Fox Soccer. Kyle, it was a good first weekend. Good to have you back talking some MLS action, and we'll talk to you soon, I'm sure.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
There goes Kyle McCarthy. Let's take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk to Paul Tenorio. We'll talk about Orlando City's debut, that big crowd, that equalizer, Kaká, the whole thing. Soccer Morning, brought to you by World Soccer Talk. Be right back. Hey there, it's Jason Davis, and if you're like me and love playing fantasy soccer games, I want to let you know about a fantastic new game called Draft11.com. This is not your usual fantasy soccer game. Draft11.com is different for 2 major reasons. First, it's a daily fantasy soccer game, and second, it gives you an opportunity to win cash. So instead of playing an entire season and competing against, say, the 3 million people who play Fantasy Premier League and winning nada, you can play Draft11.com over 1 match day against up to 10 people. And if your team wins, you win. Cash, not points. So go ahead and support our new sponsor that's helping bring Soccer Morning to you every single day. Head over to Draft11.com, sign up for a free account, and take a shot at trying to win some cold, hard cash. Thanks.
Welcome back to Soccer Morning on World Soccer Talk with Jason Davis.
Here we go. Talking now Orlando City Soccer Club with Paul Tenorio from the Orlando Sentinel. Paul, how are you the day after?
I'm doing well. I needed to get like a solid 8 hours of sleep last night just to kind of recover from the week and the weekend in general, and I got that. So I'm feeling good. I'm feeling refreshed.
You mean you didn't like suck some of that energy up in that amazing crowd yesterday at the Citrus Bowl? It pushed you through to be vibrant and awake today?
No, I mean I did. I took as much of it as I could for the deadline work I had to do, and then I crashed afterwards.
Paul, this is obviously a big debut. Lots of graphics about how this is the second highest attendance for an MLS debut. I think the Galaxy had something like 69,000 at the Rose Bowl or the Coliseum, wherever they opened up in '96. I don't even remember. And obviously, Seattle gets big crowds and all of those things. The crowd's not the story, because the team is obviously not going to be drawing like this all the time. But how important was it to get that big crowd in there to fill the bowl as they were planning to do?
No, I think it was huge. I think it was huge on multiple levels. First of all, in the city of Orlando, it was an incredible event. I think for me, it was neat just to drive through downtown Orlando before the game and see how many people were out on the streets wearing purple. Honestly, it felt like even a bigger deal than the World Cup this summer when they were drawing 10,000 fans down to the middle of downtown to watch games on the big screen. There were that many people milling around in Orlando City gear, and I thought that was pretty neat to see. And then obviously you get to the stadium and it's an explosion of fans and soccer atmosphere and just pretty amazing in general. So I think for Orlando, the city itself, the people who have kind of been wondering what it was going to be like to have an MLS team got a pretty good introduction to the sport, got a pretty good introduction to the team, and probably got a pretty good introduction to the atmosphere of what it can be like. Now, obviously, like you said, it's not going to be 62,000 people, but still just in general, the kind of the way a soccer game goes, the singing that's happening, the supporters groups, the tailgating scene outside, all of those things that are going to be essential to building a fan base that can put 20,000 people in the new stadium game in, game out. And then I think it was important too on a national scale to make that debut on ESPN and to introduce Orlando City to MLS and MLS fans and show that it's a market that's serious about being in MLS. And I think at a time when there's all this expansion happening, obviously 2 more teams coming in a couple of years and 2 more announcements still to come, I think it was important for Orlando to show that they were a more than deserving market and that they're going to be a serious factor in MLS for years to come. So it was pretty much a perfect debut. It's all they could have asked for.
Yeah, you're right. Absolutely. It does show that Orlando is serious about this. I mean, I think it's easy to be cynical about, a big crowd and maybe it fading away, especially with some of the history of MLS, a history that you know very well. But this is sort of a new era for the league, and it's definitely a new era for professional soccer in Florida, a portion of the country that doesn't have a great reputation when it comes to pro soccer in this league. But when you look at the crowd, the makeup of the crowd, and I'm curious about this, I saw a couple of stories that kind of indicated, well, if Kaká doesn't score and they don't get a point out of this game, and they don't send the people home relatively happy, maybe they lose some of this buzz. Is that the sense you got? Was this a casual crowd? How many of these people you think are coming back?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. Actually, my fiance went to the game and was in the stands, and I kind of got a rundown from her of what it was like just being in the actual stands. And, it was actually kind of a mix, she said. There were definitely a mix of families and the kids that were there and wanting to see the games and the soccer moms and all of that. And then obviously there was the core fan that's kind of been a part of this whole Orlando City scene for a long time. The 20-somethings that were, knocking a few more beers back than the families were. And but one thing she did say is that, what impressed her was just how intense the atmosphere was, that everyone was very, very into the game. Everyone was very, very into the team, that it didn't have as much of a casual feel as maybe she was expecting, which I think is, it's a good sign as well. So I don't know what to expect. I think we'll see an interesting, they're close they've said the club itself has said that they're close to selling out the Vancouver game in a couple of weeks. Now they're capping that at 20,000. So,
okay.
That's kind of what the cap will be for games going forward. They will open up the bowl for other select games. I wouldn't be surprised to see them open it up for the LA Galaxy this summer, a couple other select games. But, if they're averaging 20,000, I think that's hitting their goal. And I'll be interested to see if the demand is much higher if they start to say, okay, well, maybe we'll open up a couple of these other lower bowl sections and start capping things at 30,000.
We know that the new venue is going to be 19.5, and we've seen around this league that you build a stadium with that can hold 20,000 or so, and you put a roof on it, and you make it an enclosed environment. It could be just as loud as 62,000 people at the Citrus Bowl.
For sure. They definitely designed the stadium. They have these kind of slanted roofs, and they designed the angle of the roofs to deflect the noise from the stands directly down onto the field. So, and I think it's important, coming from a guy who watched DC United in RFK Stadium, the Vara Brava is great and it's fantastic, but it does lose some of its effect in RFK Stadium just because it's such a big stadium, and when that upper bowl is empty, it's not the same, To put that same atmosphere into a stadium of 19,000, and suddenly you're right on top of the field, and it's way louder and it's way better. So I think there's a lot of value to having a packed stadium that's a little bit smaller than having a 35,000 seat stadium that's got 20 or 25,000 people in it. So, I will say Phil Rollins said something interesting the other day. He said after selling, 62,000 seats and kind of the interest that he's getting around the city, and the fact that Vancouver is coming close to selling out already, they are kind of, I don't know the right way to put this, but I guess toying with the idea of keeping an eye on what the demand looks like through the first half of the season or so, and maybe, opening up that stadium design to get to like 25,000 or something like that. So I don't want to say that they're definitely doing that. It does seem that they're keeping a close eye on demand, and that they want to be able to provide a stadium that's going to maximize the atmosphere and that will maximize the ability for fans to go to Orlando City games.
Let's talk about the actual play on the field. Obviously, the players all loved the support and the big crowd, and they fed off of it. I mean, that game was extremely hectic. It was intense. It moved very quickly. It wasn't the best brand of soccer we've seen in MLS, Paul. And I guess what's important here for Orlando, again, getting the point is big, considering they were down a goal and they had wasted some chances. They had wasted some dominance in that game. What kind of building block is this? Because it's difficult to know as a measuring stick. Or New York City FC is not that great.
Right. No, I mean, look, you've got to remember this is the first game for these teams ever. They've had 5 weeks to get 25 guys on the same page, and that's not easy to do. I know a lot of people say, well, Orlando City brings a lot of people up from the USL, and they brought up 8 guys, 2 of which had been on the team for more than one season in the USL. 6 of those guys were signed midway through last season with an eye towards MLS. So this is still a very new team. There is a matter of trying to get these guys on the same page, trying to get those connections working. Carlos Rivas had played all of 30 minutes of preseason soccer because he picked up a shoulder injury in the preseason opener against DC United, and then came on last week in the preseason finale and got a red card within 2 minutes. So I think you saw some of that rustiness from him, just a couple touches that were off. At one point, he tried to tee up a long-distance shot when he should have sprayed the ball wide and kept the attack going. And still, at the same time, 2 of Orlando City's 4 best chances came from Rivas because he's a really, really skillful player who scored 15 goals for Deportivo Cali last season and just narrowly missed the far post in the second half yesterday on a shot. So, those are things that are going to get better over the course of this season. I think we saw, at the very least, you saw kind of the mindset of this team. They like to play attacking, possession-oriented soccer. They're not going to sit back and play long ball. They're not just going to kind of be a dump and chase team. And I think that's an encouraging thing for the league. I think it's an encouraging thing for fans in the city who care about the game, that they're going to be able to go and watch a good soccer team that wants to play, beautiful soccer. And will that happen this week or next week or 2 weeks down the road? Maybe not. But I think that by the end of the season, once these guys have gotten to know each other a lot better, you're going to see more and more positive stuff on the field. And especially when you're talking about players like Kevin Molino and Kaká and Carlos Rivas and Brian Rochez, that have the skill, have the ability, and it's just a matter of kind of putting it all together.
Yeah, I talked to Kyle McCarthy from Fox Soccer just in the last segment, and I asked him specifically about the bigger names, Kaká and his role and his ability to get on the ball, which I think is obviously key for Orlando and makes him kind of the right kind of DP for an expansion team that's going to have trouble maybe getting the striker proper service. And then Breck Shea at left back, and obviously both of those guys performed relatively well. When you look at the rest of this team, what did you pick out in terms of performance that maybe is encouraging for Orlando City moving forward? Obviously, Molino's a guy that Orlando knows that may be making a name in MLS this season, and Lewis Neal's a journeyman who covers for Shea in front of him. Who else is key? Amobi Akugo, we know.
Yeah, no, I think Cristiano Gita, the other defensive midfielder next to Akugo, he's going to be a really good player. In fact, out of the preseason, Kaká said the two players that he had the strongest impression of that he felt are going to have huge years that people should keep an eye on are Kevin Molino and Cristiano Gita. And the club is very high on Gita, another player that came from Deportivo Cali. He's disruptive in the middle of the field. He's active. He covers a lot of ground. He'll venture a little farther forward than Akugo. I think you saw kind of in the way the system works, Akugo will drop kind of into just barely in front of those two center backs because they spray a little bit wider when the outside backs get up the field. And that's how you kind of keep that balance in the back. And Gita is able to roam a little bit more behind Kaká and cover that ground. He's got the chance to be a really good player, just 21 years old. I think that's one player. Rafa Ramos, we didn't get to see a ton of him getting forward. I think they were a little bit more focused attacking up the left side with Shea, but I'm a big fan of Rafa Ramos. He came over from Benfica. He's just 20 years old. He's part of the Portugal under-20 national team. Might be 19 years old, actually. And he's a very, very solid outside back. So those are two players I definitely think will be consistent starters for Orlando City. And I think, like you said, I think Molino played very well last night. I think he had some nice little touches here and there. He's going to get beat up a lot. He's a small guy. He's a slight guy, but he's very skillful. He's got a good nose for goal. I think that he's somebody who is still trying to carve out his role on this team. He played the number 10 last year when he had 20 goals and 9 assists in the USL and won the MVP awards and set their single season scoring records and all that. Now he's back on the right side and he's starting. And look, it's tougher than people think to play with Kaká. He's all over the field. He drops deep to find the ball. He drops wide to find the ball. So the guys that are playing up top in that the three attacking midfielders, they all have to get to learn to play with him. And I think that's something Molino's still figuring out. And I think he's got a chance to be, a newcomer of the year candidate.
Let me look to the middle of the defense because obviously Aurelian Collin picks up the red card on a rash tackle on David Villa. That's a no-doubter for me. I don't think there's any real complaint. I'm not sure what Collin was trying to say when he was complaining about the card. And I guess, obviously the partnership yesterday was Collin and Seb Hines. Collin comes off with the red card. What is there going to be an issue? I mean, not that Collin is a red card waiting to happen every time out, but certainly there's going to need to be cover there if he's out, if there's injuries. Seb Hines is obviously a player who has come off his own rash of injuries. What's the defensive sturdiness like for you?
Yeah, I think that's the biggest question mark still on this team. I think it's the biggest question mark that Orlando City has tried to figure out. They've got Sean St. Ledger, who's going to start in the next game with Seb Hines. I mean, that's two players who have played in the English Championship. St. Ledger is obviously an international player. He's played for Ireland, so he's got the experience. I don't think that's the question. It's just a matter of, how is he going to fit into the MLS? How is he going to fit into the style of play of this team? That's been the hard part, is kind of finding the right partner for Collin. He, like you said, he's a little bit maybe a little bit is being nice. He's very aggressive. He likes to step forward. He likes to kind of be getting in on tackles like we saw yesterday. And you kind of wanted someone that was more and technical on the ball center back. And I think St. Ledger does fit that mold a little bit more than Seb Hines. So, it might be a natural partnership, but certainly they've got another center back in on trial. They're trying to figure that out. And then they've got two young center backs behind, and Connor Donovan, who's a U.S. under-20 national team player, and Tommy Redding, who has been a U.S. under-18 national team player. And I think both of those guys need a little bit more time before they're ready to play day in, day out in MLS. But I thought Connor Donovan was really, really good this preseason, and I think that if they needed to put him in a game, I think they'd be relatively confident that he could be a spot starter for them. I just think they prefer to have more veteran leadership in the center of that back line, especially with Shea still learning things at the left side, Rafa Ramos being 19 on the right side. You want to have kind of a more veteran presence in the middle of that back line, and it's something that they're going to have to figure out, and definitely the biggest question mark on this team right now.
Short week for them. They go to Houston on Friday, play that Friday night game. First road trip, obviously, in the regular season. Any expectations for you? Houston's kind of an unknown quantity, although they come off a win over Columbus.
Yeah, I don't know. I will be interested to see if they tweak the formation at all, if they play a little bit more with the defensive shaping on the road for the first time. They got to see Houston and Charleston. They lost 3-0 in that last game. They got 2 red cards. They were playing 2 men down. Bonnie Garcia had a field day. So I'll be interested to see kind of what they do. I wouldn't be shocked to see them come out with like a 4-3-2-1 instead of a 4-2-3-1. I don't know if they'll start doing that this early in the season though. So I think every time you go on the road, you play a little bit differently. Mentally, you want to be protective, and you want to try to earn points and steal some points on the road if you can. I think that it's maybe a little earlier in the season than they would like to start tinkering with formations and stuff. So I expect them to still come out in that 4-2-3-1. I wouldn't be surprised to see both Higuita and Akugo play a little bit deeper, to see maybe a little bit fewer venturing runs forward from the outside backs, just as you play a little bit more conservative. But in general, I mean, this is a team that, has a very possession-oriented offensive mindset, and it's hard to kind of switch out of that. So, for me, I'm just waiting to see and continuing to watch the growth of the players, the growth of the team. It'll be interesting to see if they move Rivas back out to left wing, which is his more natural spot, and play Brian Roches up top and try those different combinations. That would be the one big thing I'll be looking at, besides obviously the center back pairing with Colin out.
Yeah, I'd like to see Roches. I'm looking forward to that. And you have to imagine Orlando's going to have to learn how to go on the road and muck it up and win ugly in MLS, because that's part of getting points and making the playoffs. Paul Tenorio from the Orlando Sentinel, talking Orlando City's debut on Sunday. Great start for them. Obviously, they would have preferred a win, but hey, you take what you can get when you're an expansion franchise. Paul, thank you very much for your time, man. Thanks a lot.
No doubt. Thanks for having me on.
Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll open up the phone lines, get your tweets. It's Soccer Morning, 347-756-6276. Don't go anywhere. Be right back. Seven 756-6276. Maybe you want to talk MLS weekend. Maybe you want to talk La Liga and the switch in the standings. Maybe you want to talk about Bayern Munich basically sewing up the Bundesliga because Wolfsburg lost to Augsburg and what the hell's happening. I mean, Bayern was always going to win. We knew that. But now Wolfsburg has removed any drama whatsoever by dropping points to Augsburg. Good stuff. Just a little bit of a tease here. This is a big week for Soccer Morning. Couple of excellent guests coming up later in the week. On Wednesday, Alejandro Bedoya, U.S. international, winger for Nantes. He'll join us to chat a bit about his season over in France. And then on Thursday, the is he USA number one? Is he U.S. number one right now? I mean, that's what he is now, as long as Tim Howard is on sabbatical or whatever he's on. I don't know. Anyway, Brad Guzan of Aston Villa and the U.S. men's national team will join us on Thursday. Very much looking forward to both of those interviews. We don't get a lot of players around here. It's always good to have players on. Get the especially guys based in Europe in an era in which players are returning to MLS at a rapid clip. It's pretty much an MLS American U.S. national team now. Bedoya, Guzan. Who am I missing? Cameron. Who else is Aaron Johansson, who scored this weekend in a absolutely in a big loss. He scored in a gigantic loss, but he still scored. Aaron Johansson scored, so he's based over there. Who am I? I feel like I can count like the U.S. internationals who are based in Europe on one hand. Am I wrong about that? Who am I missing? There can't be that many. Maybe some guys coming up who may feature in the future. That's hard to say. Emerson Hyman at Fulham, but no, he's not really a fully established U.S. international at the senior level. So you don't have much of a European contingent anymore. We're going to grab a couple of them. Bedoya on Bedoya on Wednesday. Can't believe I did that. Guzan on Thursday. Looking forward to that. Make sure you write it down in your handy-dandy Soccer Morning notebooks. All 75 of you. Make sure you're writing it down. 347-756 6276. We're continuing our push on Twitter to make Don Garber notice us. That's really what this is all about. Make Don Garber notice that we're a thing and get him on the show. That's the plan. Tweet him at the Soccer Don. You can tag Soccer Morning if you want. That helps. Just mention Soccer Morning. I mean, you don't have to tag us necessarily in the Twitter way, but I suppose that would help him learn actually who we are. Do we think that Don Garber knows what Soccer Morning's all about? Do we think he knows? I'm curious. I mean, this is not an avoidance thing, right? He's just a really busy guy. He was in Orlando this weekend. He's probably flying to Minnesota or Sacramento or San Antonio or Miami. Julian Green. That's a good one. On the pitch, says Julian Green. No, it's not going so well, is it? DeAndre Yedlin. Yes. See, I am missing some guys. I knew I was missing some guys. Thank you, Shane, for tipping in DeAndre Yedlin. Juan Vieira wants a shout out to the Tijuana players and the U.S. men's national team players at Tijuana, keeping Cholos top of the table. Yes, absolutely. They deserve tons of credit down there in Tijuana as they are top of Liga MX after a couple, 9-10 games into the season, into the Clausura. David's on the line. What's up, David?
Hey, Jason. Nice job getting these interviews. That's impressive.
Hey, all credit to Trevor Hayward. Hayward. Did I say Haywood?
Hayward. That's
what I'm bringing him down. I'm bringing him down a notch by getting his name wrong. David, what else is going on?
So I'm wondering, and every time that there's a shift in the not in the time-space continuum, but in the daylight savings time, of course, here in Arizona, we never caught on to that concept. So anyway, I'm an hour late, realizing that your show has been on for almost an hour. But anyway, I was wondering if you guys have discussed the television coverage of the MLS games on Sunday. I didn't see all of it, but I saw bits of each of the games, and I was pretty impressed by that.
I thought it was fine. I mean, David, that's the kind of thing people love to pick apart, the television coverage of MLS, and I thought it was fine. I thought the score bug on ESPN was an improvement. I'm not one of those people that's sitting there breaking everything down. Maybe some camera angles and some shots and some replays could have been better. I like Healy and Twellman together. Over on Fox, you obviously had JP Dellacamera calling that first game with Brad Friedel, and then you had John Strong and and Alexi Lawless on the second game, and I'm fine with all of those guys. I have no real issues with that. I think the most important thing for me, the coverage is what the coverage is, and both of these networks have enough money to make it look good, and I think it does. It looks professional. But the thing,
my two thoughts would be, firstly, Brad Friedel. I don't get it. Is he a goalkeeper for Tottenham, or is he not? I mean, or is he just doing it remotely? I'm presuming he must be doing it remotely. And then the other thing is that when they did the transition on Fox between the first game and the second game, I thought it looked a little bit more professional than I'm used to seeing MLS broadcasts look. They did this sort of transition, and they went, suddenly you saw the field in the background in Seattle, and I thought that looked pretty.
Look, I love Rob Stone. You can't go wrong with him. The fact that you have Eric Winalda back on MLS, I think, is good for American soccer. Whatever you think of Eric Winalda, the fact that he gets to talk about MLS is a good thing. Again, David, I'm going to let you go. Thanks for the call, man. The thing I was going to get to, the most important thing for me when it comes to television isn't necessarily the quality of the broadcast. I want that to be good. I think that's a high standard enough as it is. It's those locked-in times when you know when these games are going to happen. I think that's huge for MLS. 540, you're on the air.
Hey, what's up? This is Austin in Virginia.
What's up,
I guess
Austin?
first to go with what you guys were just saying, I thought Fox did a great job, honestly. But what's it called? Also, just wanted to congratulate you and Trevor on Friday's episode, because that was incredibly awesome.
Thank you.
Yes.
Some people didn't. Some people didn't like it. It's okay. I don't blame you. We tried something out. I mean, we're experimenting around here. It gives us a little freedom to be different.
You see, I thought it was crazy for Trevor just to get all those people, and for you to control that many egos in under 2 hours is insane.
Every single one of those guys is an awesomely nice guy. Really, that is a true statement. I think I'd have to go down the list, but I'm pretty sure I've met every single guy on that list, and they're all very nice guys. What else is on your mind today?
But yeah, what I did want to say is, I guess with Jozy coming off with a running start, do you think he's a top scorer by the end of the season?
It's very possible. I mean, if he gets that kind of service from Giovinco on a regular basis, is he going to be playing those kind of through balls every week? No. But if Jozy can get the ball at his feet, I mean, you saw that. That was not he has missed easier chances in England than he put away yesterday or put away Saturday in Vancouver. It was a great first touch to get around the keeper, hits the shot on the sharp angle, and there was no doubt about it. I don't know if it's confidence. I don't know what it is. I don't know the quality of MLS. I don't really care. I think Jozy is going to score a lot of goals. I don't know. I mean, he's 2 in the first game. He's obviously not going to average that. If he can get one every other game and finish around 17, that would be huge for Toronto. Absolutely.
Definitely. Well, thanks for taking my call, man.
Appreciate it. There you go. Tay, you're on the line. What's up?
Yeah. First, I'm glad DC United won. I was like, good start. I like it. The second thing is, I watched the Quest game against Dallas to see Tommy Thompson. I was hoping he'd get on the field on the pitch, but I don't know. It seems like he's pretty far down the depth chart as far as that first game goes.
Yeah, I don't know. I mentioned this. We talked about this on the Best Soccer Show last night. Me and Jared Dubois. We're both in the Tommy Thompson hype train. We're conductors on that train. And to not see him in the opening weekend. I mean, maybe it's Dom Kinnear learning his team. Maybe it's I don't know exactly what you want to ascribe it to. But I hope we see Tommy Thompson. And I really hope. I mean, I don't know. Dom Kinnear doesn't seem like the kind of coach who is going to, take a risk and put in a very young, inexperienced player when he needs to scrap for every point he can get to make the playoffs in the West. I don't know if this is a good situation for Tommy Thompson. We may see the type of regression that we saw with Diego Fagundes last year, or Luis Gil at RSL, or even Jose Villarreal, who's now back in the LA plans, but for a little while was on the outs.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hoping like he doesn't become like Luis Gil, where he hasn't played much last season. I'm just hoping that because last night's game, I mean, Don Kinnear used many players. He could use Tom Thompson substitute, but he didn't. So I'm hoping he doesn't become like Luis Gil. I mean, he gets more chance to play in the future.
Yeah, I'd say while you're here, I know you're a United fan, as you said. You're glad that they won. Did you see enough to think that they're going to be back where they were last season? I mean, what did you make? Obviously, no Eddie Johnson is a thing, but was there enough from United for you in a 1-0 win over Montreal to feel good?
Yeah, I mean, I like the fact they're aggressive. They're moving the ball pretty well. Obviously, just like many of the teams last night, they're pretty rusty, it seems like. So there's a couple things that are a little bit off. But Arrieta, I think he's good for like at least 7-8 goals. So until like Espindola comes back, I don't know what will happen to Eddie Johnson, but I think we can hold on. And I like the ball movement we watch. So hopefully Chris Pontius stays healthy. Yeah, I think so far it's first game, but it looks pretty good.
Okay, fair enough. Arrieta scoring goals is a good sign because he's not the most reliable goal scorer in the league. There's a reason why Columbus let him go. There's a reason why Orlando took him and then immediately traded him to DC United. So hopefully you can get a couple of goals, as you said, out of Jairo Arrieta. And I don't know what. I mean, it was a fine goal. He took it well, but I'm not sure what Bush was doing coming out of his net that quickly when he had a defender, not that far behind Arrieta. At least in terms, you could push him wide. Maybe you come out and make yourself big. To come out all the way to the top of the box like that and get beat by one touch was pretty bad. All right, 347-756-6276. Couple minutes left in this episode of Soccer Morning. If you want to jump in, again, big week of shows coming up on Wednesday. Alejandro Bedoya will join us on Thursday. Brad Guzan. We're continuing our Twitter push to get Don Garber on the show. I just love that there's like some discussion going back and forth because of this. On the pitch says, what happened to Tim Ream? He's still at Bolton, right? Tim Ream's still there. I don't think we're talking about Tim Ream. Tim Ream's not a U.S. international at this point, is he? No one's going to call him that. Got to work himself back into the mix. Got to play himself into a position. Now, he moved around last year. Wasn't he Bolton's player of the year last season? I don't know where he is, to be honest with you. I haven't tracked Tim Ream. I haven't been on Americans Abroad to track those guys. I usually read about the young guys. That's probably not the right way to go. Because again, we have this predilection here. The American soccer fans, we always want to hype up the young player. And then we hype him up too much, and he doesn't meet that standard, and then he's a failure somehow. I don't know. I don't want to get ahead of it. This is part of the problem with Tommy Thompson. Tommy Thompson could have a couple of year arc to get where he needs to be as a player. And yet we're all jumping on the Tommy Thompson hype train. He showed a little bit last year at the end of the season. You change coaches, and Dom Kinnear comes in, and maybe he won't be first selection, and we're going to get upset about it. 414, you're on the air.
Yeah, this is Ray from Milwaukee, and I just want to talk a little about the television coverage.
Sure, go ahead.
I thought it was, as a product as a whole, as great. But what I'd like to know is if the NBA or the NFL or MLB lack that type of diversity on English language television coverage, would minority groups be disappointed with the coverage that they're getting?
It's a good question. Something, just to pull back the curtain a little bit here, we had a couple of people note that our entire lineup of experts on Friday, all those guys that we brought on to give their picks are white guys. Every single one of them is a white guy. We did reach out to a couple of people who aren't white guys who weren't available. So I don't think it's necessarily, it wasn't about us choosing that. I think it's a function of where Americans. I mean, I'm a white guy. What am I? As another white guy here. Americans.
Yeah, but I like your show, Jason. You get a lot of people of diverse backgrounds and a lot of minorities on your programming. I think if MLS wants to reach out, if MLS truly wants to get the best soccer ratings that they can get on English language television, incorporating diversity is only a good thing.
I agree with you. We have some established names here that are filling those spots. And, I guess that what we need to see is some of those guys moving into the broadcast realm and adding more diversity. There is some diversity out there that's available. And maybe it's on Fox and ESPN and again on anything that's any sort of soccer product in this country that is attempting to represent the community as a whole. And we try to do that. I mean, again, it's difficult. If I spoke Spanish, I would be speaking Spanish right now to mix that in as well, because I realize that that's a major part of American soccer.
Right.
But we fill those gaps where we can, Ray. I mean, that is you have a point.
And I just want to say that the thing for me is I'm glad that they have this app available on Spanish language, the English language, and people finally realize that it's not as easy as just pressing a button.
Yeah.
So for the Spanish language fans that want to watch, or people that are bilingual that prefer to watch it in Spanish, it's not that easy.
Right.
That's why I try to emphasize that these networks got to do a better job. Univision, preferably, needs to do a better job of making this league more available to their fandom.
Okay, fair enough. Appreciate the phone call, Ray. Thanks a lot, man.
Yep. All right,
there you go. Daniel in Atlanta, what's up?
Good morning, Jason.
Good morning.
Speaking of broadcast, is Fox gonna ever put a MLS match on like your national broadcasting channel?
I don't think that's part of the deal. I'd have to go back and look at what they've signed up for. I don't think that that's something that they plan on. Now, they've done that with the Champions League. I think they've done it occasionally with the FA Cup. I think the FA Cup final was over the air last year. That I imagine that'll be the case this season. I don't know what they plan to do with the Bundesliga. I think that's something that they're looking at. I don't know that they've committed to that with MLS. I would love for that to happen. That would obviously be a much bigger possible audience for Fox than just to put it on Fox Sports 1 or the Fox Sports 2. I can't remember what the breakout is. I'll go back and look. Jonathan Tannenwald has all this stuff locked down. But so I don't know the answer to your question, Daniel, but we can obviously sort of complain about it if we want.
I was just curious. On another note, last night I wanted to say that Kenny Walker, I would have much rather preferred to have seen Bozzy Vucinic instead of Kenny Walker in the lineup. And do you know why? Do you have any insight on why JP Jaime Pinedo didn't play?
No, I have no idea. I did not catch that, to be honest with you, Daniel. I apologize. There's lots of soccer this weekend, man. And I'm being distracted by being told that I'm pronouncing that new Italian player in Toronto's name wrong, and I better get it right. So I don't want to piss anybody off, Aaron. So I should say Jovinko, okay? I'll say Jovinko from now on. Sorry. There you go. What else you got, Daniel?
Not much. Thanks,
right,
and I look forward to the interviews.
All right, thanks a lot, man. Appreciate the phone call. 347-756-6276. You got about 4 minutes to jump on the line if you want to talk MLS, broadcasting, diversity in American soccer, whatever's come up today. So it is morning still, right? Looking outside. Yeah, it's still morning. It's a Monday morning. It's been a good show. All right, so I'm getting told by the guy who says we have 75 listeners that there are 2 games on Fox over the air for MLS. They committed to 2 games. So there you go. All right. And Cosmonaut Chronicle. What about the New York Times front page article on the Cosmos being the first team to play in Cuba since the end of the pro sports embargo? If you listen to the beginning of the show, Cosmonaut Chronicle, you'll realize I already talked about this. But hey, you people on Twitter who are big Cosmos fans and listen to this show seem to be incredibly sensitive to anything Cosmos related. I mentioned it. Just calm down. I am not anti-Cosmos. I don't know why. What is that, by the way? Could I get some feedback on why everybody thinks I'm anti-Cosmos? I think I've done a pretty good job of talking New York Cosmos on this show. I think I've done a pretty good job of talking NASL when it comes up, when it's a thing. Well, when the season starts, we plan to talk NASL. We have Bill Peterson on this show all the time. In fact, hey, Bill, you want to come back on, talk Cosmos? More than happy to do it. You guys want to call in, talk Cosmos? Let's go. Bring it on. 347-756-6276. It's a very cool thing that the Cosmos are going to Cuba to play the Cuban national team. That's exciting. That's cool. Spread the word. Cosmos are an international brand. Somebody will have to tell me how popular the Cosmos actually are in Cuba, whether they're aware of the new Cosmos. I imagine that they're aware of the old Cosmos through some cultural, some cultural leeching. Vince is answering the question. Vincent Toronto's answering the question about Jaime Pinedo, saying that Unama said that Pinedo was in a contract dispute with the Galaxy. I didn't realize that. Very fascinating stuff. All right. Let's wrap up this edition of Soccer Morning, brought to you by World Soccer Talk. Remember, go to backheel.com/store to buy yourself a Soccer Morning mug. They're very pretty. They have our logo on them. They hold coffee very well. This is actually water. They do a fine job of holding water as well. Go to 30fc.com to buy a T-shirt, and I'm in the middle of my spiel, but I'll close out with a phone call. 469. You're on the air.
Hey, Jason. This is Noe in Texas.
What's going on?
Hey, I wanted to bring up a thing about the broadcasting.
Sure.
I think ESPN and Fox is going to do a good job. What worries me is Univision. They seem to be more focused on Liga MX, their TV shows.
Well, that's where their bread is buttered. Look, they've signed up. Univision signed up. They've got a slate of MLS games. It's on them to produce it better. And maybe the complaints are fair, although I didn't watch that game on Friday, so I'm not going to comment. But I will say this. When it comes to ratings, when it comes to what brings them money, Liga MX and their telenovelas are bigger deals than MLS. I mean, that's just a fact of life. So we want them.
Then why not go with Telemundo or?
Because that's who stepped up to the plate. I mean, I don't know what the negotiations were like. I get your point, but I think that we have to give them a little bit of time here to figure it out. And if I'm not mistaken, they have committed to on-site broadcast teams where they've done it remotely before. If that's not the case, go ahead.
Univision, good deal, but at least you get 2 minutes of highlights of MLS, and then the next 30 minutes on their sports show is Liga MX.
Yeah, but again, that's the popular league for them. No, that's the popular league for them, and I understand your frustration. And maybe they won't be the network that really pushes the league the hardest. And it's going, MLS is trying to make inroads into the community that typically turns their eyes to Mexico and Mexican soccer. So this is something, I guess. I mean, again, it's not like they haven't been on Spanish language television before, but it's a matter of having that lockdown place on Friday night, knowing where that game's going to be every week. I think that's more important than almost anything else. I appreciate the phone call. It's not that I don't understand the frustration. It's just that I think we get ahead of ourselves in terms of the demands that we have for a league that doesn't draw much in terms of television ratings. It's just a fact of life. MLS has to prove that it can bring the viewers before you're going to get the full-on effort of these television networks. All right. So backheel.com/store, 30fc.com, worldsoccertalk.com, obviously, and make sure that you're giving us ratings and reviews on iTunes, because that helps out a lot. You're following us on Twitter at Soccer Morning. I think you are. You better be. Thank you very much to Kyle McCarthy and Paul Tenorio for being on today's show, and we'll be back tomorrow. We'll have a Tuesday episode. Not sure who yet, but it should be good. Join us then. Talk to you. Bye.